Welcome back to another DF Retro Holiday Special. Just like we did last year, we're here to talk a little bit about our retro pickups this year. Basically, retro games that we added to our collection over the year. And when I say we, I'm of course talking about my partner in crime, the venerable Audi Sorlie, who is here with me remotely.
That's right, John. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, exactly. Last year you were here for this, but obviously
I know
this is not the best year for such things. So
it's been a difficult year in many ways, and I think our this retro pickup last year was kind of popular. I got a lot of feedback on that video. I remember.
Yeah, it was fun to do, so we thought we'd do it again.
It was really fun.
So
but I wonder how much our pickups have been affected by the situation. Like last year, we picked up a lot of weird, random games just because we found them, and I wonder if this year maybe we got some more like long time wants.
It's a little more laser focused, I think. So
maybe.
So let's break this down here. The idea then today is we're basically going to go through 5 games each that we added to our collection that were like games that we really wanted to add or that we're really happy we got, and maybe a few honorable mentions at the end. So that sounds good, right?
Yeah, sounds pretty good. I have 5 ready.
I'll start off then.
Go ahead.
So the first one for me, and this is a big one, most of my list is actually very focused on the Mega Drive. And Contra the Hardcore, or the Hardcore. I finally got the Japanese version of this. I've been looking for this for a while. It's not a cheap game. And the main thing is obviously I'm really focused on building my Japanese Mega Drive collection.
Boy, are you ever.
It is, it's pretty large. I got a lot of games for it now. I mean,
I feel like, sometimes I look back at pictures of us hanging out, like in the very beginning, and I look at your collection then. And then I look at it now and I kind of wonder if I kind of had some bad influences on you, because that wall is just getting bigger and bigger, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah, it's growing. But this game, I love Contra the Hardcore. I have the US version as well. But the Japanese version, so I love the cover art and the overall design, and it's great to add it to the Japanese collection. But this one actually has an interesting gameplay tweak, where you actually have 3 ticks of life, whereas in Contra in the US and Europe, it works more like classic Contra, where you take a hit, you lose a life. And that's normally fine. Like Contra 3, it blasts through that no problem. But it's pretty brutal, I think, to go through it, because I feel like the game was designed with the 3 life things in mind. I mean, I have finished the US version before, but I find it less enjoyable to pick up and play on a whim, because you really got to be in the zone to get into it. Where this version, it's a little bit more enjoyable for a quick pick up and play. So
yeah, I mean, I tried to help you for a long time getting this game. I'm pretty happy you have it finally. I have to admit, I never liked Hardcore too much when I was playing it. I played as Pro Protector, which I think is a much better game, of course. But when we played the Japanese version together, I totally agree with you. It's so much easier to pick up and play when you have a little bit of leniency with that difficulty.
Yeah, and again, it's not like difficulty is an issue for these games. I don't mind it really, and I kind of go back and forth between the 2 versions, but it's really interesting. I think it's cool to have both, and I'm really happy to have this in my collection. So that's number 1. What about you, Audie? What's your first pickup?
Man, this is a weird one. I generally don't do arcade PCBs much, but there was one where a friend of mine kind of pointed out, hey, do you want a good deal on this? And I had to strike, and I'll show it to you actually. It is this one, which you wouldn't be able to tell what this is just by looking at it, I think. Of course not now that it's blurry, but it is Fighting Layer, the very first game in Arika's kind of Street Fighter EX series. One of my my favorite Street Fighter is the EX series. So I was really happy to get this. It was never consoleized. So now I finally have the very last game in my Fighting Layer collection, and love the soundtrack. It's a little bit of a different game than the sequels are. This one is kind of like a mix of Street Fighter and Bloody Roar, Last Bronx, in that you're kind of caged in. But I love the responsiveness of the controls. I love kind of the brisk flow of that kind of snappy, reflex-based combat that Arika does. And yeah, I just had to get this PCB. I have no way of capturing this for you though. I realized when I picked it, but we will get the ways to do it.
That's really cool though, and like you said, the thing I love most about that game actually is the Ayako Saso soundtrack.
Oh yeah, Aihara and Saso did amazing work on those soundtracks.
It's so good. Here's a quick sample of it. It's really, really good.
Yeah, just that soundtrack, and of course, when a couple of years ago they released the 8-disc soundtrack collection, I had to get that too for Fighting Layer.
Oh my gosh!
And of course, there's a new one on PS4. So if you haven't checked the 2018 version out, I definitely recommend that.
Fighting Layer EX, right?
So what's next on your list, John?
Next on my list, actually, I'm gonna flip over to a different system. The only time I'm doing it on this episode, and that's Super Famicom. I finally got the Ninja Warriors again.
Ah, the Japanese version.
So I fell in love with the Ninja Warriors once again, I guess last year, which was sort of the pseudo remake that they did, similar to Wild Guns Reloaded.
Yeah, same team.
Where it's kind of like a lot of new artwork and design, and it's the same guys that did it, and it's a really good version. But I also wanted to own the original, and I finally got a boxed copy of that. And yeah, I mean, even in its original form, this game is just phenomenal. It's a really interesting type of game. There's not a lot like this because it's like a pseudo brawler, but also a little bit. I actually when doing my Game of the Year video, I talked about Mad Stalker and that, and Mad Stalker is kind of part of this genre. I feel where it's like the 2D side-scrolling brawler, where there's a little bit more depth than usual than like a normal brawler, but it just has this like really snappy feel to it, and yeah, that's the big draw here. It just plays amazing.
The single plane brawler where you just kind of go left to right,
exactly,
and beat up people. But yeah, the Ninja Warriors again, it's just it's one of the best action games on the Super Famicom. I do have it too. I have the NTSC cartridge for US.
It's even more expensive.
I really love that game, and it was one of my honorable mentions. I guess I think this is the only overlap we have today.
Oh yeah, that's true. One other thing I should note, like the last two games, of course, and this is kind of a theme with these, the soundtrack, the music here is just superb. Fantastic. Like, listen to this first stage. Like, for my money, this is actually one of the best sounding games in the entire system. I just love the soundtrack to this. So this is a great game. If you get a chance to play it, check it out. If you don't want to get the original Super NES/Famicom version, check out the remake. Once again, or the Ninja Saviors Returns, or whatever it was called.
Ninja Saviors.
Elsewhere. Yeah. So that's that. What about you then? What's the next one on your list, Audi?
So the next one I have is actually one that we did pick up when we were together the one time this year. I think we saw each other maybe once. And we went to Cologne together.
Oh, yeah.
And someone had a good offer again for a game that I've been looking for a long time. And it is Kazakiri Ninja Action on the PC Engine. I don't think you were too familiar with this game.
No.
But it's one that's been onto my hit list for a long time. It is this wonderful ninja action game. Could kind of say a bit like Shinobi 1 style, single plane, just kind of left to right. But I love the presentation of it. I remember when we were sitting and watching it at your place earlier, you couldn't believe just the detail and the action in those cutscenes.
Yeah, it's unusually nice. I mean, PC Engine stuff, right? I mean, there's always great stuff on the PC Engine. I love the engine. But yeah, this one, I'm impressed, actually. It's pretty fun to play, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic too. I love the soundtrack. It's a little bit kind of, you expect with a name like Ninja Action, which we've already talked about in this episode, the kind of high, high power, high octane. It's a little bit more reserved, but I kind of like that because the whole setting of the game is kind of theatrical. There's not much dialogue, and most of the sound effects and such is actually PCM. It's not generated from the CD. It's all done with that sound chip, which isn't the best for digital sound, but it works for this game. So yeah, Kazakiri was a game I've been wanting for over 15 years, and now I finally have it.
What are the odds? It's pretty awesome, dude.
So what's next on your list?
All right, so I guess the next one on my list is Battletoads, or Battletoad, depending on where you look here. So this is the Sega Genesis / Sega Mega Drive. Well, in this case specifically, it's the Sega Mega Drive Japanese version of the original Battletoads. This, to me, is the secret best version of this game. And I feel like I don't hear a lot of talk about it. And somehow it feels like it's just kind of forgotten. And I understand there's a draw to that NES version, the nostalgia. The Rare, of course, was the original developer. But this version was developed by Arc System Works. So they were around all the way back then. They've been around a long time, of course, of Guilty Gear fame and many other things. And what I feel that they've done right here is, so it sort of keeps the NES sort of like aesthetic and proportions, but it ramps up the amount of colors per scene, and it adds parallax background. So it's a tasteful 16-bit conversion that doesn't stray too far from the original art, which I think is really important for things like this. They also did a really good job with the sound conversion, which is great. But most importantly, the game balance is improved. It just plays a little bit better than the NES version, especially some of the later stages in there. It's just a smoother playing game all around. A lot of the rough edges are kind of softened, you could say, which I think makes it more replayable and more fun to jump in and out of than the NES original. Even though I still love the NES version, but this is just a very pleasant kind of surprise if you've not played the 16-bit version of this game.
I definitely think it plays better than most other versions of it. The sound, I think, lacks a little bit of that oomph that the NES version does. And I think it's missing a few scenes. I think last time I played it, I noticed that like some cutscenes aren't there. So they both have their, pros and cons, the Battletoads. But I definitely agree with you that if we're going to play some two-player Battletoads, we generally choose the Genesis version, and maybe we're the only two. But I still think I agree with you. It plays pretty well.
But all right, what's next on your list then?
Yeah, I feel like we've been brawling a lot during our pickups this year, and this won't stop. And this one comes from something that we did together. Once we had finished our Final Fight video, a friend of mine at Beep Akihabara kind of let me know that, hey, you did this Final Fight video, it's pretty cool. Do you want to get the X68 version of Final Fight? And I said, yes, please. So one pickup I got this year that I did not expect to ever have is the full, complete X68 version of Final Fight, which actually comes with this special CD, a mini CD that's inside from Arf Raira, which was Capcom's house band. Me and John
have we featured them in the episode, I think.
Yes, it is featured in there. So I actually have that big box now, and I really have to thank Beep for this. They've been very nice to me this year. But yeah, that version is one of the closest to get Arcade Perfect back then, before we got the emulated compilation and such. It plays really well, sounds really good, and just wish I had a working X68 to play it on right now, but I guess you and I are working on this, so...
I've been trying to get one of those for a while, but they are not easy to come by, unfortunately.
We'll get to it.
But yeah, that is a cool version, and I think as we discussed in the video, the only real, downgrade is maybe one less sprite on screen at a time.
There's one less sprite. There is actually slowdown.
That's right.
At certain times, and yeah, I think that's about it.
Pretty
for
close.
The setbacks. It's very close. And Capcom used X68 to develop their games, which
was their development hardware, so it makes a lot of sense why it would be that way. So that's really good.
So what's up for you?
The next one I'm going to go with actually is a game called Donna Me Tanjo, which so first of all, you know Raston, right?
Of course.
The original Raston. Great game from Taito.
The first one.
The first one. Well, that's the point. The first one is quite good. The second one, Rastan Saga 2, it's not good. They went for these gigantic sprites. It's ugly. It doesn't play well. Something was lost. The thing is, though, is it turns out that Donna apparently was developed. There was some of the people connected to the original development team of Rastan were involved in the creation of this game. So it's their company's kind of relatively unknown, I suppose, but you can see it. This is essentially like a pseudo Rastan sequel with some really cool kind of like cinematic moments, if you will. Basically, it goes back and forth between the on-foot Rastan style swordplay, but then you have more focus on like these like high-speed sections and riding different creatures, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. And it's just the amount of times that the scenario changes is really cool. Like just the first stage, you start off riding this creature, then you're doing normal hack and slash, and then you go into this building that's on fire and climb vertically to the top. And it's just, it varies it a lot. So in that sense, it's like, it's just a really cool action slasher kind of game in the vein of, Rastan or a little bit Castlevania in some ways. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. It's pretty short, to be fair, but it's a good game. And I suspect a lot of people have not played this one.
It's a very cinematic action game, yeah. As you said, like every set piece is different, and you race down the horse down the mountainside, and like things are coming at you, and it's very detailed and beautiful. And I love the design of the whole game. I love the music, and just the cover art. That cover art on that box you have is just incredible. I want that as a poster.
It's so good.
Love that, and I think this got a fan translation also, so for people who kind of want to seek it out, it is kind of more Western friendly these days.
Another thing about it that I really like is that this is one of those few Mega Drive games that doesn't rely on dithering. So you notice they just use a lot of solid colors sort of in these different bands, but they use it artistically to kind of create these interesting shades. So the color scheme, the way the game looks, is actually pretty different from your typical Mega Drive title. So I really think it feels unique to the platform, and I really like it for that. So that was another good one. I had played that years ago on an emulator, basically, and I always thought it was really cool. But I guess somehow I just never got my hands on it. It was pretty expensive, and a decent deal came along, and I couldn't resist.
It's funny to think about, but the Mega Drive really has so many great female heroines in video games. You have Donna, you have, of course, Asha from Monster World 4. And
Valis makes an appearance on there.
Yes, you have Valis. So Alicia Dragoon, there's just so many.
Oh, yeah, I got that last year. That's a great game.
That's a great game. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, it's a cool little fact.
All right, so what's next on your list then?
So this one is kind of cheating, but not really when you think about the circumstances. Back in the mid-90s, there was a company called FamilySoft that was publishing this game called Mad Stalker on X68, and I think it was in your Game of the Year.
Yes,
as well.
That's right.
So people are probably familiar with the history by now, but this was a version of the game that was canceled back in the day for the Mega Drive. It had been released on the PC Engine with a pretty good arranged soundtrack from my friend Yona Okeji, and the X68 and FM Towns versions were very popular due to just the complexity of the music and great graphics and brawler gameplay. Someone actually unearthed the source code. The funny thing about this one is that when I met Yonao a few years ago for dinner, he actually mentioned that he had worked on this game, and I never thought we would sit here and play it, but someone unearthed it, and he actually came back to rework the sound driver, and this is, for me, the best version of Mad Stalker we ever got. And the primary reason for this is just that soundtrack is phenomenal, and we really need to take another listen to that soundtrack. Isn't that just the most insane thing you ever heard on the Mega Drive?
Well, I featured it in my Game of the Year video too, because it's just, the music is incredible.
Yes, Yono is just one of those composers that needs more, people need to know more of it.
His Oscar soundtracks are great too.
Yes.
He's done a lot of great music. I love it. It's so good.
He's still around. He's still very active in the game industry in Japan. A very good person. So if you get the chance to pick up Mad Stalker on the Mega Drive, I definitely suggest you do so. Yes, it's a new game from this year, but it is still very much retro, so it is my number 2 this year.
I guess for me then, the final one of our main 5, everybody knows this game, but I finally got my hands on Vampire Killer, which is the other big Konami release. I now have every single Konami Mega Drive game released. It took a while, but this was like the final piece of that puzzle. And a viewer of the show gave me a really nice deal on this, so if you're watching, you know who you are. Thank you. It's well worth it. I love this game. This is Castlevania Bloodlines, if you didn't know. The Japanese version is kind of the original, slightly less censored version of this game. And yeah, it's in the top 3 for me as far as Castlevania games go, I think. Like, it's just an exceptionally well made and very unique action game on the system. It's so cool. And the music is incredible as well. I think it was Yamane's first big Castlevania score before she would go on to do
I believe so. I think
yeah,
this was
before Symphony of the Night there was this. And you can hear a lot of similarities in the musical approach, I think, already in this game. So it's again, I assume most people watching are quite familiar with this game, but if you haven't played it, I really recommend checking it out, because it is just it's awesome. It's such a great game.
And any version of that game works. I mean,
any version is fine. I do like this Japanese art though. It's and yeah, my weird devotion to having this Japanese set. But I must.
Well, the Japanese version has great artwork again. I mean, this is something that comes up with a lot of Mega Drive games, is that they have wonderful artwork. And Bloodlines has pretty good artwork as well from Tom DuBois. But I do love me some Japanese Castlevania artwork as well.
So I guess what's your final big one on the list then?
Well, I'm noticing also that something that binds us here in our pickups, John, is our love for video game music.
Yeah.
This next game that I have in my number 1 is actually a game I don't like playing too much. I have to admit, I'm not very good at it. And it's only number 1 for me just due to the rarity and the insane deal I got on it. I basically found this game in a classified up here in Europe.
Oh.
And I couldn't believe it. Called the person, asked, is this, do you have it? I was like, yeah. And he did not know what this game was. So I just, don't Google this game while I drive to your place, please. And he did not. So I got the Gimmick, the Scandinavian release of Gimmick on the NES.
Mr. Gimmick.
I finally got Mr. Gimmick, indeed. So I got this. Again, so not being a huge fan of the original, I do love the music from Kageyama Masashi.
I can't believe it though, because I am a huge fan of this original and I don't have any copies, and you actually have both versions now.
I do have the Japanese and the Scandinavian now. And the original Japanese, of course, has the sound chip in it, which makes that soundtrack outstanding. It's one of the best on the Famicom of all time. And really, the Scandinavian release is only worth it for the rarity, in the sense that it runs slower and it has less sound channels, so you're really not getting a good deal for your buck. But as I got lucky,
it really does run slower in the fact that this is one of those few, like a lot of PAL games, if you just run them at 60 hertz, they actually look and play just fine. But Mr. Gimmick is one where if you force it to 60 hertz, it actually breaks the game. So you have to play it at 50 hertz. So it's not great, and it's not actually that optimized for it either, so it still doesn't play right. It's actually not a great version of the game, but it is extremely uncommon.
It was only released in Sweden during the very tail end of the Nintendo NES's life up here. So, and there was quite a few of those releases we got. We got Euphoria as well, which was Hebereke in Japan.
Yep, that one's cool.
And I guess we just had a love for Sunsoft games, so we did get Mr. Gimmick, and I was very lucky to get the cartridge. And it's my number 1 just because of how lucky I got. But I would say probably if it wasn't for the rarity, Mad Stalker would be my number one. So let's say it's a tie.
It's fair enough. So yeah, that's pretty much those are the main ones I think we went with. If I had to pick any runners up, and just to quickly mention 2 other ones that I got this year that I really enjoyed, Panorama Cotton on the Mega Drive as well, which is super impressive. It's sort of like 3D sprite scaling kind of game, beautiful, just amazing to see what they could do in the hardware. So I really like that one. And then the other one that would be a runner-up would be Veritex, which is a rather it's an obscure shooter with that actually it's quite a lot of fun. Actually, I really like the game itself, but the soundtrack by Hitoshi Sakimoto, listen to this is just incredible for the system. Yeah, I mean, Sakimoto did such great work on the Mega Drive. Kind of an unsung
Gauntlet
hero.
4, this, just incredible work.
Bad Omen.
Still banging to this day.
/ Devilish.
Yeah, Bad Omen. Just an amazing talent. So I got to meet him a few years ago, and he's a very kind man.
That's good. That's good.
Love Sakimoto.
But yeah, I mean, we could go on and on about this. Are there any other quick runners-up that you might throw into the list as well?
Yeah, I mean, for runners-up, probably the Japanese version of Flashback on the Mega Drive.
Right.
Just because it comes in the small Sunsoft case. I should mention Panorama Cotton, Sunsoft release, comes in the full-size case.
Yeah, I think
very strange.
Panorama Cotton was a very late release for the Mega Drive, which is one of the reasons it's so rare. But by that point, Sunsoft just put it in a regular size case, but it still has the special Sunsoft cartridge. So
that is true. My other runner-up would be thanks to our friend Retrospiel in Köln. He managed to hook me up with a copy of Sagaya on the Master System.
Oh yeah!
I mean, this is a very impressive Master System game, and they're actually not the bad conversion of Darius 2.
I agree.
So really, I've had a lot to do with Darius, and so have you this year. We've had a lot to do with Darius this year. And so I just kind of like, well, I love the Master System. I'm starting to really love Darius. So I guess I should fulfill that love and get Sagaya. So
excellent. But yeah, I think that's good. You know, it's fun to talk about this. You know, anybody watching, let us know what you think. Or if you guys have any cool pickups, let us know on Twitter or something. Because, you know, this is...
But you're not done yet, John. See, we can't be together right now. And this is very sad for both you and I, and for our fans, I think. But since we are doing the retro pickup, it is almost Christmas. You have one more pickup this year that I'm actually going to give you for Christmas.
Uh-oh, what's that?
Well, I'll show you. Hopefully it shows up on camera, but just to give people context, though, I did give you a game a few years ago on my favorite system, the PC-98, didn't I?
That's right.
Which was
Doom.
Doom.
For the PC-98. It's the rarest version of Doom.
One of the rarest. And
I cherish that version.
But every time I look at your shelf and I see that, I'm just... Something's missing, John.
Uh-oh.
And this year, it's us that's missing.
Oh, well.
But let me at least complete your shelf and give you Doom 2.
Oh my god.
For the PC-98.
Yes!
Merry Christmas, my friend.
I shall treasure this forever. There we go. The genuine reaction caught on camera live. That's pretty awesome. Doom for me it's one of my favorite. I think it's like the forever game. It
is the forever game. For you,
with the constant WADs still being made today, the total conversions, and I mean all the source ports. I play Doom often, and just having another piece of history with Doom, it's great. I love it. So thanks very much, and thank you, the audience, for watching all the way into the video this far. This is pretty awesome. So yeah, it wasn't quite the same as last year, but hopefully that'll change for 2021, and hopefully we'll get back to some of the retro bursas here in Germany. all of which were canceled this year.
We need to find CDI games. That
That's
was
right.
sorely lacking on my
There's no-
list. I don't think I picked up any CDI games this
See,
year.
that's not right. We can't have a year without CDI games. It shouldn't
Did
happen.
I get any? Do you remember?
Actually, you got like Accelerator or something.
Oh, I did get Accelerator. Family Games one.
Something like that.
Was another
Oh,
one.
and
I
CD
forget.
Shoot. So you
CD Shoot. I
did get some CDI games. So
And I also, of course, got the system seller, The Joy of Sex. I'm not very good at that
that's
game,
right.
but I still got it.
all right. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode or discussion video here on Digital Foundry. So if you guys enjoyed it, as always, like, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Come join us on Patreon if you want to come hang out in our Discord and talk some retro games or CDI. You know, all is welcome.
We're both there.
Absolutely. And until next time, stay retro.